What's up, everybody? Welcome to the party. This is Simply Cyber Firesides. I'm your host, Dr. Gerald Auger. Today, we're going to be diving into a topic that's wicked critical, but doesn't always get the spotlight it deserves: how to properly manage a penetration test. Now, when we talk about penetration testing, everybody's like, lead level 0 days and hack all the things and the Gibsons and whatnot. But if you've ever been a part of a real professional pen test, you know that it's not just about technical exploitation and pwning all the things. There's a whole orchestration that happens behind the scenes. There's coordinating with clients, there's managing timelines, there's setting expectation, there's keeping the technical team on track, making sure everything gets delivered on time, and most importantly, with quality. Because if you're running this as a business, you would like repeat business from your clients. And if you're a hot mess express, yes, they'll probably pay you for that one, but they're not going to call you back when they need their annuals done. Our guest today has managed over 100 pen testing engagements annually and has mastered the art of bringing structure to chaos. She's got an MBA. She's a PMP. She holds a Security Plus. She is delightful, and she brings what she calls Ms. Frizzle energy to security operations. Now, remember, chat, I see you, AB and Steve Young, Rick Kelly in the upstate, my man Jesse Johnson here first in chat, and David P. It is a live show, and we want to hear from you. Drop your questions in chat throughout the conversation. Tory will answer them, or I will get them to her. So whether you're managing pen tests, you're on the technical side and want to understand the operations piece a bit more, or you're just curious about project management and cybersecurity, bring your questions. We need this to be a great conversation, and without your participation, we just can't achieve that. So put your hands together, if you will. If you're a squad member, get your Oprah emotes on. I myself am going to go ahead and lead the Oprah charge, and we can explain that to Tori if she wants to know afterwards. But there's the Oprah charge. Let's go get her, and let's have a great show. What's up, Tory Fisher? How are you?
Hey, good. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We are pumped to have you. I know a lot of people in chat are familiar with you. We have one community member already dropping questions in chat. Let me see if I can pull this up. You may recognize him. Tyler Ramsby comes in. He says, who's your favorite coworker at your previous job? And was it Tyler Ramsby? So please be as honest as you can.
Well, Tyler, you know that I cannot pick favorites. However, you know that I always have a place for you. And I've always appreciated your diligence and your really excited attitude towards project management and encouraging me to do things like come on the show. So thank you, Tyler.
Yeah, I love it. And that's a great point. For those who don't know, the reason that Tori and I know each other, and the reason that she's here today, and the reason she's making a course for Simply Cyber Academy, more about that later, is because Tyler Ramsby introduced us. That is networking at its finest. And I'm really glad. Tori and I have had multiple conversations. She's an absolute delight, as you guys are about to find out today. So let's dig into it, Tori, because we want to give value to people. I guess let me ask you, by the end of this conversation, what is it that people in chat can expect to walk away with?
Yeah, so I expect people to walk away with a little bit different of a perspective. So, as you mentioned, it's not super glamorous project management, but everybody has to do it. So whether or not you have a project manager that you're working with while you're performing pen tests, whether you're working by yourself as a solo operator, or whether you are in a team doing pen tests for an organization and you don't have a project manager on your team, this is a skill that everybody needs to know in order to be successful. And I know, the focus is always on, you have these technical skills that are obviously so important, but you can't showcase those if you're not organized, if you can't communicate, if you've got blockers on your project, you cannot show off how awesome you are.
Yeah, 100%. I love it. And by the way, this is like classic example of someone who's like, oh, I do all the pen testing. Why do I only get 1/3 of what they charge for my hourly rate? This is bull crap. Well, all the things we're going to talk about today is part of what that is coming from. So for someone who's never managed a pen test before, Tori, what does managing a pen test actually mean?
Yeah, so it means handling the entire life cycle essentially from end to end after all the sales stuff. You're not getting on the phone. Hopefully, you're not getting on the phone doing sales and closing your own deals. But the project for you generally should start once a deal has been closed, meaning you have an engagement, there's a client that's on board, and you have somewhat of a scope. That's where it starts. And when you begin, the first place to always begin is with preparation and looking at that scope. So oftentimes it gets handed off from sales. Sometimes between that time period, there can be an adjustment with the client. They might have changed their mind about what IPs are in scope, what their main focuses are, what their concerns are. And so it's good to study what the conversations were beforehand, and as much as you can, ask for notes. If you have a CRM that you can look at, leverage that. Do as much as you can to prep about the client as possible and what they're expecting out of this pen test. And then you've got the ball from there, and it's all the other project managing is all the other steps in between, including to issuing the report, doing debrief calls, and then remediation if that's something that you offer. That is the whole cycle. So from kickoff from being handed off from sales to end of remediation, it's a pretty long time period.
Yeah, and a lot of client management as well as team management. I mean,
Yes.
you've managed 100 plus pen tests annually at, prior roles. It sounds like there's a lot of repeatability. Like what's the framework or the process that you use to keep that many engagements organized and on track?
Yeah, absolutely. And repeatability is absolutely key because you are going to be doing things, hopefully not concurrently, but right next to each other, and you've got to go, go, go and move very fast. So the framework that I like to start off with is making sure that there's an initial organization prep call. Get everybody on your team, get everybody on the client's team together. Make sure that you're having an actual verbal conversation. Shortcuts can be done to do this by email, but it's really best just to get on the phone. I know everyone hates the phone or Zoom, doing it live, talking to clients, but you really have to do it. Get on a call first, get yourself aligned, make sure that you've got the scope down and that you start talking about preparation because the client needs to prepare for this engagement just as much as you do. So start off with that. Then do a little bit more of pre-planning. So typically for me, this is, in an email. We're recapping what the conversation was before, list out, make it very, very, very child-proof, step by step, what the client needs to get you in order to do the pen test. So typically that's things like get your credentials, make sure that your IP is whitelisted if it needs to be, try to get through any of the gotchas. And then make sure that you're setting up deadlines for the client and for yourself because clients will always wait till the very last minute or they've got really complicated procedures and processes that you're unaware of. It might seem like it's really easy. Just give me access to your web app, create some logins for me. Well, it does sound super easy, but oftentimes it can be really time consuming on the client side, a lot of hurdles to go through. So you have that planning call, you have a recap planning email, you got to make it super crystal clear exactly what is expected. And timelines, timelines, timelines is everything. You also need to have set up for communication during the pen test. So, depending on your client's appetite, it might be something like real time. Maybe you have a Slack channel, maybe you have a couple touch points, maybe you have a policy where you have no communication at all unless there's a problem or a blocker. It sort of depends what works best for you. But again, in that initial prep call with the client, these are things that you're going to want to discuss. Of course, if there are any blockers, problems, red flags, bring that up immediately during the pen test. But that prior piece is really critical.
So, you've done hundreds of these, right? Are there any kind of common challenges that, you typically stave off because you're like, I've seen this happen. I'm going to just get in front of it now that someone who might be new, it just isn't going to know unless they sit in the chair.
Yeah. Communication with clients is really its own beast. And you'll have some clients that are really responsive and engaging. However, uh, not so much for others. And I understand, it's a pen test. It's not necessarily the most exciting for your clients either, but it can be incredibly challenging and difficult to get somebody to respond to you. And what I recommend with this, you're doing such critical work on such sensitive systems, you need to make sure that what you're touching is appropriate, that it's not going to break or cause any damage. You need your clients to respond. So having a plan for communication, making sure that you have like a Slack channel or that you do have an email chain, something prepared is great, but you also need to make it very easy for your clients to respond to you. So what I do for that is I'll often send very, very, very brief messages. They need to be incredibly succinct. So the client is only focusing on a couple different things. Have them focus on a couple sentences and a question or a comment or a blocker, and that's it. Make sure that they've got one thing to respond to at a time. Now, sometimes this can be a little bit difficult. During a pen test, you'll often have a dozen questions that you need the client to answer, and a dozen questions that you want the client to answer. Now, you have to triage and prioritize, because everything that comes at you or everything you might want might not necessarily be important. If you can't log into an application that you're supposed to be testing, that's a huge blocker. The client needs to resolve that. If you're also waiting for, let's say, documentation and diagrams, you might want to hold off asking about that until you've gotten that original blocker. You need clients to focus. You need to be very specific. You need to be very, very direct with them.
No, yeah, 100%. And I got to tell you, it made me think one of my personal things that took me years to discover, and then even years after to prevent doing, is talking about two wildly different things in the same email. Because then if they respond to just one of them, you like lose where that other one was. And you're like, I absolutely emailed you about that. And they're like,
no.
Yeah, exactly. So you definitely got to be careful with that. So I'm actually kind of curious too, on the other side of the coin. So what are some common mistakes that you see the organization make when they're preparing for a pen test?
Yeah, they just don't do the legwork ahead of time. So, clients don't necessarily understand that the clock generally starts the first day of the pen test. Every organization is different on how they do this. So if they don't get their prep work done, they're just eating into all the pen testing time, and the pen testers sitting on their hands, not really knowing what to do. So I have seen it dismissed before from clients where they don't necessarily realize the urgency behind certain things. Like, well, we can't connect to your VPN. That needs to be troubleshooted before we can do your internal network testing. They don't necessarily understand the repercussions. So as a project manager, one of the things that I have always made it very purposeful is to point those things out, because the client, yes, there's a blocker, but they need to know that they're wasting their own time and money and resources, and they're not going to have in-depth of a pen test. And now I don't necessarily recommend that pen testers themselves, who are trying to dip their toes into project management, they might not be the right person to bring up those points. So feel it out. Feel how comfortable you are. You might want to have a manager or somebody say that, because it is very important that they know they're just burning money if they're not prepared, if they don't have it. The other thing too that clients could do to be a little bit better prepared is, really think about the angle of the pen test that they're looking for in terms of how much information they want to share. So if they do want to be engaging and work essentially, side by side with the pen tester, that's really important, but they need to make sure they've got those resources dedicated to doing it. If they want to just be totally hands off, that's fine too, but they need to have some sort of goal in mind. And if their goal is really to be collaborative, they need to be prepared with providing documents, resources, maybe a product manager on call to help answer questions, and really just make sure that they're being a true partner, or that it's very clear that, nope, this is totally black box, we're giving you nothing, go ham.
So I'm curious, as you're talking about some of these things, like, the angle of what the client wants and their level of interest and stuff. Again, I guess I do work in this space right now, which is probably why I'm asking this question.
Yeah.
How much of that is decided during the sales workflows, right? Because it's like, you don't just walk up and be like, I got plenty of pen tests up on the shelf. You want one? Here you go. Here's a pen test. Tori will take it from here. Like, aren't you kind of discussing during the sales cycle, like, hey, like, what's your budget? What kind of pen test do you want? Because you're not just trying to sell transactional work. You're trying to help the client improve their posture, I would hope. So I guess
Exactly.
I'm curious, like, is there a disconnect between sales and delivery, or is like a good salesperson would do it and a bad one or an inexperienced one, let's not throw shade, might do.
Yeah, no shade. Mad love to all my salespeople out there. You're doing the good work, and it is its own beast. So I think that they are completely separate. So sales has a goal, right? They know how to sell a pen test. That's exactly what they want to do. They want to bring the client on board and have them understand the company's value really in depth and what they can provide. However, the role of a project manager is not to sell. If you do your job well, you do not need to sell because they've experienced a really clean, smooth process. They know exactly what to expect and they've had a good experience. And I would argue that unless you're absolutely tied, you should not have your salesperson be the project manager, because sometimes the project manager has to put on that bad cop hat. I have a very friendly bad cop, but if
I
I
can't
look at the
imagine you
test,
being a bad cop, Tori.
oh, it's a I can be, but I'm friendly about it. Don't get me wrong. But I do sometimes have to be the bad guy and say, this isn't working well. This is a problem. Things are going to be delayed if you don't get me information. And I have a lot of levers to pull to make sure that things can be, prepped in time. But sales, yes, they're talking to the client and they should be asking, what are your main security concerns? What do you care about? And they absolutely should be the ones to be discussing budget and making sure that everything is aligned. That is not something the project manager should be doing. But if they're burning their hours and their days because you're literally sitting on your hands, that is something that the project manager should be saying, or somebody needs to message that to the client.
Scoping is always very, very important on a pen test engagement, both to stay in scope, but also to make sure that the things that the client wants help with or their needs are within scope. So, like, again, this a PM
Yeah.
thing or a sales thing? But like, how do you work with clients to set realistic expectations and define
Yeah.
what's actually going to be tested?
Yeah, so both. So the sales side, they absolutely should be scoping to the best of their ability. They really should understand how large is an application, how many IPs are in scope, what does their cloud infrastructure look like. They should have all of that. However, typically, once a deal is closed, the pen test doesn't necessarily happen right away. It could be weeks later, it could be months later. Depends on what is contracted. So the first thing that the project manager does need to do is reconfirm scope. In my experience, there's often several changes to it, which doesn't necessarily mean we've got to kick things back to sales. You don't necessarily have to get it rescope for a service order, but there are changes and focuses that can still be applied to the current engagement at hand. So, if let's see, there's a web app that's being tested, and previously they had a major concern about a filed upload function. Well, maybe they don't have that concern anymore, and there's some other feature that they want really hammered at, like the login page. Great. That's not a problem. That's something that I can easily have my folks switch and really change gears on. But if it's something astronomically different, like, ooh, we don't need a web app pen test, we actually need you to test my AWS, that is where you would need to pause, have discussions on how to handle that internally and do a clean break there, because that's not necessarily something a project manager should be handling.
And just out of pure self, I'm here to service the community and get them your questions, but my own personal question, would you consider this like a scope creep kind of thing? Like, oh, like we want you to test our web app. And then you get there and they're like, well, we also have a mobile app that, basically interfaces with the same API infrastructure. And
Yeah.
that's part of the web app. Can you do that too? I mean, would you be like,
Nope.
really going, yeah.
Generally, I would say no. That's where the bad cop kind of has to come into play and say, this is what we were contracted for. This is what the engagement is. Happy to help you add on more services. I can kick this back to sales if you want. But again, the client sometimes then readjust their perspective, because maybe in between that time period, they did decide, oh, it'd be great. We'll just throw in the mobile app, and they don't really realize that's not how pen testing works. So typically a pen tester is assigned to a project based on their skill set, their deep expertise, and anything niche that the client might need. And throwing a wrench in that, well, maybe that pen tester is not the best fit, and it is very difficult to change resources. Then it pulls attention potentially away from the main project if they don't want to expand budget, and it can cause a whole bunch of mess. So
Yeah.
scope creep, not super great.
I just want everyone to know, though, if you do have a mobile app that you want tested, Tyler Ramsey loves testing mobile apps. He told me himself. So just throw him over the fence to Tyler, and he'll take care of that. We had a question from AB in chat, Tori. He said, "My
Yeah.
question: how much do you, in your current role, need to cross function among teams, like the dev team, the red team, the business?" Because he's thinking that dev and pen test cultures clash. Great question, AB.
Yeah.
Really solid dude too, by the way, if you get to meet him, Tori. Go ahead, Tori. What do you say to AB?
Yeah. So, as the project manager, if, you're the dedicated person, not the one doing the pen test, there really isn't too much cross-functional communication internally, but there is with the client and their cross-function teams, or there can be, and I would encourage that there should be. So internally, generally, you are just interfacing with the pen testers, and you will occasionally be talking with sales to make sure you're coordinated, but most of your conversation, most of your focus will be with the pen test team, because you need to be able to be responsive to them. You are their number one guard and block between any issues that happen with a client. You are the gatekeeper, and you're there to protect them and let them be head down and focus and do what they do best, which is hacking away. So let them do that. But again, while you're doing your planning and the project is going on, it is super helpful if you can get other teams from the client involved as well. So they're developers, they're going to be deeply technical, they're going to have the documentation, be able to answer a lot of questions. You can get their IT ops involved, because if you do have problems authenticating or getting whitelisting done, they're generally the person who can remove the blockers. If they do have a security team, they're also helpful to have involved as well. And product teams, they tend to know where the bodies are buried, so to say, and they can point you in the right direction if that's the type of pen test that they're looking for, to really be deeply engaged with you. But nonetheless, it is really important to understand how to communicate with each of these parties. So technical people generally want to speak with other technical people. Now, I'd be lying if I said that everybody involved in a pen test all the time is deeply technical. That's absolutely not the case. I would actually say the majority of the time, I would be interfacing with folks that are more like me on my level, that know enough to kind of be dangerous. You know the lingo, you know what's needed, you know what's expected, but you might not necessarily be hands on keyboard. So another skill to work on there is being able to kind of do some switching in terms of your language. So when you're working with folks that are more like me, I would suggest that you don't get deeply technical. You do need to phrase things and change how you speak, so it's more surface level, high level, very clear and understandable. You cannot get in the weeds, because otherwise it's just a distraction. You won't get quick answers. You won't get unblocked. You'll have quite a few problems. So being able to gauge where your audience is at technically is super critical. And I would also recommend, that's something you can ask them just point blank, like, hey, just want to make sure I'm level setting here. Does this make sense? How proficient is everybody? It could seem like a dig depending on how you phrase that, but generally clients will find that to be really helpful, and they find it to be, you're working with them like a true partner, because you're trying to cater to their expectations and what they can handle.
Yeah. So again, getting back, you started with this too. Communication is vital
Yeah.
for success.
Everything.
So before we pivot into like day-to-day management and what that looks like, let's talk about like, do you enjoy managing pen tests? Like, what's the cool things about it? What's the downsides to it? Let's get real
Yeah.
talk. Real talk. Spill the tea, Tori.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love it. So I love working with people that are super duper smart, doing really cool stuff and breaking things. I honestly had no idea that this was a job when I was younger. I mean, I was so excited to get into this space. I mean, I started off being obsessed with hackers as a kid. Love a young Angelina Jolie. Who doesn't? Got
Right.
super excited from that. But then later on, I'm like, this is a thing. Wow. And once I got into the industry of it, what I really appreciate so much are the minds of the people in the pen testers. They have such a special brain. It seems, kind of funny to say that not everybody can break something. Not everybody has that mindset. Not everybody has that skill. And it really is a mindset and a skill. And just seeing the way that people can pick apart a problem is so fun. And I've seen some of the best that I've been able to help participate in has been during like physical pen testing and stuff, giving some of my ideas on attack vectors and really just going through all the things. I just think it's so freaking cool. But what gives me super joy that I love even more is just enabling them to do their best work, which is why I've gravitated towards project management of things, because I'm the enabler. I also recognize it's a huge power position because I could also be the blocker. So you always want to make sure that whoever's in that position, if you're doing that, if you're the project manager, you need to be a really good steward, because you're not just working on your career. You're also very involved and very directly with the pen tester's career. You're either setting them up for success or you're not. You're either unblocking them, helping them progress, or you're not. And that's not something that everybody thinks about, but it's huge and vital in my opinion. But negatives,
Yeah. Any downsides?
It is also a skill to talk with technical people and be on the same page and all of that. There's again a special mind. Pen testers are a special breed. You think a certain way and you have a lot of certain goals that people need to be sensitive to, right? So think about it. You're in an application, you're hunting, and every time you have a finding, something goes off in your brain. I found something. This is really great. Just like you're in Vegas and you spun the wheel and you hit jackpot. That's actually what happens to you every single time. And so what if you're having a bad day? What if there's nothing in this environment? What if, you're on a 3-week project and you've got 2 mediums and that's all you have? Well, that's okay. That might actually be okay. But the sensitivity there needs to be with the project manager, because that pen tester might not be feeling great about themselves. Those 2 mediums, even though they're wildly important, wow, that's all you found in 2 weeks. Props to the client for being super secure. They're going to be thrilled that you found anything at all. That person might not be feeling good about themselves, which leads to things like imposter syndrome, which we all know that everybody, I can guarantee everybody on this call has imposter syndrome included. I'm sure you too, Jerry.
Yeah.
And so that really plays into it. And so making sure that you've got the emotional intelligence to respond and communicate and to encourage is just critical. You can either be a pen tester's ally or not. And I really like being an ally. And that's something that I absolutely encourage, because all it does is helps the pen tester's career. It helps the clients get really more secure. It helps foster really strong team bonds. It generates revenue. It's more fun and it's exciting. And I don't know, pen testers are really cool. I like hanging with them. They're fun to chat with.
They are
all bonding.
Some of them rap. Some of them rap too, Tori, as you know.
I know, Tyler. I'm waiting on my rap. I'm just throwing that out. Project management.
We're talking with Tory Fisher, who is a very seasoned pen testing project manager, about what that role is and why you need to do it and why it's important. And it goes way beyond anything technical around executing pen testing, but it's the wrapper, if you will, around it. So if you have any questions for Tory, just put them in chat with a Q. If you have any comments or observations, put them in chat. We want you guys to be engaged. Now, Tory, I would love your thoughts on this, and you can go as deep down the rabbit hole as you'd like, or
Sure.
you can punt. We do have that option here. So managing projects, there are humans. It is a very technical project, but anytime you sprinkle humans in, you have human, challenges. How much of project management is technical execution of managing a project schedule, budget, resources, versus being a human manager? And I don't want to say a therapist, but like managing humans and emotions and, expectations. Cause you just alluded to, the pen tester who's not finding domain admin creds, on day one, and how they might feel that they're not necessarily successful. And I'm sure you have conflicting personalities in some instances. You have, all sorts of different things. So I'm curious, a peek behind the curtain, how much of the job of managing a pen testing engagement is technical execution versus human management, human issue management?
Yeah, so I would say it's about 70-30. So 70% of the time, you really are focusing on scheduling those calls, doing debriefs, making sure that the projects are scheduled correctly. Nobody's double, triple booked. Nobody's got a project starting at 2 in the morning that they're unaware of, things like that. Things that have happened, and those are things that always make sure to avoid. Um, and, I don't want to say playing therapist because that's not quite
Right. Yeah.
correct. Yeah, because of course, if somebody is breaking the rules, the rules of engagement, the things that are super critical, there is only so much you can do before you should be escalating that to a manager to be handling, because that is a sticky situation the project manager could find themselves into. Sometimes they are the direct manager of the pen testers. Sometimes they're not. I would say more often of times in organizations I've seen, they're not. So while you do have a responsibility to the organization, to the project, to bring things up, there is a fine line where you do need to escalate if something is super egregious. So, my rule of thumb is really, if this crosses rules of engagement that has been discussed with the pen tester, with the client, that everyone's aligned on, and the pen testers had lots of reminders on it and they're not following through, that's usually one of the only times that I've had to escalate, because otherwise, just have direct conversations. Hey, we talked about this, please don't do that again. And it seems to work well. If you've got a good relationship, it's all respectful. We're all colleagues working for the exact same goal to secure the hell out of something. It's not personal, and everyone's got to play by the same rules.
AB had another question, and AB, you're so kind. He says some nice things about me here, but when you find all these findings, right? Are you the one who's putting the results back into the organization's risk register? What's the level of interface between the project management people and kind of like making the results actionable for the client?
Awesome. Yeah, good question. So it depends on what your setup is. Let's say you're working for a company as an internal pen tester. You're only hacking away at your own systems. Probably the project manager would be responsible for getting that into a risk register. However, in traditional companies that are just doing pen testing, the majority of times I've seen it where after that report has been issued, here are your findings, the company is entirely hands off. It's up to the client to decide what they do with those results, how they triage it, what systems it goes into, that sort of thing. However, there's always a dialogue, of course, because there can be a negotiation. And what I mean by that is, let's say the client thinks something that you've rated is critical, is actually a low, or even an informational. Great, let's talk about that. Let's adjust if needed, if that makes sense, reissue a report. But generally, once it's off to the client's hands, they can do whatever they want with it. It's their responsibility to do anything or not do something with it. Now, a lot of organizations also offer remediation testing, which is terrific. Not all clients take you up on that. So you don't always necessarily get the end of the story, so to say, until the next cycle when they come around for their annual, and you can ask them a little bit more in depth. Hey, how did that go? I see you get remediation. What are you concerned about this time? And sometimes clients want to share. Sometimes they don't. Just depends.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, you mentioned the remediation testing. Tyler Ramsby launched a pen testing company with alongside me for full disclosure called CairoSec, but that he said he learned everything from Tory. So everything that Tyler does with CairoSec, he learned from Tory as a best practice. So there's very good value in this conversation if you didn't realize it. Like, so good that someone has taken this knowledge and ran with a company with it. But one of the things that Tyler does offer clients, and they love it, he offers them two things, and I just want to point these out because they're actually, let me ask Tyler really quickly, because Tyler, I don't know if this is like trade secret, and I don't want to disclose it. But I'll just say for the remediation testing, offering to come back in 90 days and allow them to get tested again is awesome. Because to me, that's like the biggest value. Like, if you're talking about client value, it's not about, ooh, I got domain creds. It's like the client, that they don't even know what that means. Like, they just want to be more secure, right? So Okay, good. The other thing that he does that I love, I've just gotten clearance from him, is delivering the report like as you're walking out the door, which is a huge differentiator. And I've seen clients like faces light up at sales calls on that. Like some of them don't even believe him, which is great. But obviously he gets a chance to prove it. How valuable is that? And why do you see that as a good practice?
Very. I see it super valuable, and not just for documentation purposes, though. Although I would say the majority of people that I've seen come back for remediation, it's because they have compliance needs. They need to have a clean report. They need to have something to show their clients that doesn't have much on it. So that's fine. But also, a lot of the clients too, like I mentioned, they'll go ahead and do their own remediation, and the report's for them, so they don't really care about coming back and doing it. Tyler, just a heads up though, it's going to be more than 3 months. Clients can be wild cards and you don't always know what to expect. Sometimes clients will come back in 2 weeks. We're like, ready for retesting. I've got everything done. Other times they're going to just wait and wait and wait. And sometimes it's a year later. I've seen it where it's 2 years later. And that's where sometimes the bad cop hat has to come on, be like, you know what? At the year mark, I'm willing to entertain it. If they haven't made too many changes to their systems, but the 2-year mark, absolutely not. You got to put on that sheriff's hat, because your client is likely still building and whatnot in that time period, and it's not apples to apples. You're not comparing the same thing. So it is critical to get that initial report into your client's hand as soon as possible. Now, I understand that's not possible or always super easy to do, because every organization has their own tools or setup for report writing. There's a lot of applications that are out there that you can get off the shelf. Some people have their own proprietary. Some people I've seen just using, Excel and Google G Sheets, and it's very, very manual. So sometimes, you do the pen test, and you get all the exciting stuff done, and then you've got to spend a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks going through the proper reporting, which is disappointing, because I do feel like there is an element that's lost when you have to spend that much time reporting, because you're not as fresh. If you can do it as you go while you're pen testing and the findings are there, that's great. And if you have things that are high and critical, you want to get that into your client's lap as soon as possible. Sometimes they're aware that they have these things. Sometimes they're absolutely not. And again, our main focus, we got to get the world secure. So the sooner, the better, the faster, the more streamlined, the better.
Once a pen test kicks off, like what's day to day look like for you? I mean, do you just build the castle and then push it, or you build the boat and then push it in the water and you're done? Or what's day to day look like?
Sometimes. So it depends on the culture of the organization. So I was really fortunate enough that the culture of the group I was working with, we were very collaborative and highly, highly, highly talkative and communicative. So there was an expectation, because it was a repeatable process. Everyone knew exactly what to expect. So for me, there's an initial welcome email or Slack or whatever. Hey, we're kicking off here, your pen testers. This is what's getting started. This is what's happening. And then I kind of, for me personally, and it depends on the organization and the group, everybody's differently, but the group that I was with, I would let them, after some training, of course, go off and sort of do their own thing. They had their own frameworks on how to get started and things that they would look at depending on what type of pen test it was. But I trust them to do what they do best. However, I want to know what's happening. I don't want you to be sitting there and like every time you move your mouse to go and type me a message, I don't need to micromanage you. But, if I haven't heard from you all day, I want to check in. I want to know, I want to hear from you at least twice a day. I want to know, do you have any blockers? If you have a blocker, escalate it immediately, because as I've mentioned a few times, communication is critical. Blockers can sometimes be insanely difficult for clients to resolve, and all of this is eating through, burning up their pen testing time. So if you have a blocker, escalate that to me immediately. I want you to be super chatty about that. If you found something cool, I want to hear about that. If you have something that's interesting, you don't know if it's going to lead anywhere, I want to hear about that. And, I also want and expect my team members to be talking with each other as well. Just because there's one person assigned to a pen test, well, you've got the mind of everybody in your organization. If you're working for a pen testing company, lean on that. We all know that it's impossible to know everything in this space, which is again why imposter syndrome is so huge in this area. But everybody has different expertise. Everybody does. So lean on that. Ask questions. It's not a dig to do it. And if your colleague's asking, be respectful and answer. That's exciting that they want to learn something from you. That's a good thing. The whole group can learn if you're all communicating. So yeah, I expect a very, very heavy touch point if it's required. So if there's blockers, there's something cool going on, tell me about it. I also expect my pen testers to escalate to me if there's something that's super, super, super critical. If there's a finding that's so egregious that could potentially be exploited out in the wild, it could be, or no, you want to let the client know immediately. So that requires rapid disclosure, which is heavy coordination then between the pen tester, the project manager, to pass that information on to the client to make sure they receive it immediately.
Well, all right. It sounds like blockers are like the main thing. That's
Yes.
the number one thing that you are responsible for is eliminating blockers. Like your
Yep.
title is pen test manager or project manager, but in reality, you're blocker destroyer.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Because there are so many of them from every angle, and you don't even know where they're going to come from. And you have to be prepared to pivot and block and tackle them constantly. And if you're a project manager, you probably have more than one pen test going on. You might have a dozen. And so that can be a lot to manage and organize as well. So you've got to constantly be on the lookout. I'm constantly doing triage, honestly. So I always have a very solid list that I'm prioritizing constantly, sometimes hourly, depending on if I'm waiting for a response on something, if I need to get somebody a thing. I'm at your beck and call.
So what kind of I know this triage list is probably varies and it's very client dependent and whatnot. But I mean, what's your approach to prioritizing these things?
Yeah. So anything that is actively stopping a pen test from occurring is a 911 for me. If we aren't getting if we can't log in because there's a Cloudflare in the way or something, there's a WAF in the way, like that's a huge problem. The client wanted it to be tested without that because anyone can bypass a WAF with enough time. That's always what's most important. And any of those blockers that stop a critical part of testing is something that I issue right away. And then I check and monitor for those responses hourly, just because that again is taking away from critical pen testing time, the time that the pen testers can spend to get those the light up moments in their brain, win that jackpot, have those findings. And then it also takes away from the client and their budget and the depth of their pen test. It also makes the organization look good because you're being on top of things. You're really caring for both the client and the pen tester for joint success.
So your background is really interesting. I didn't go into too much on the intro. I just talked about, how amazing you are in the sheer volume of pen tests that you've managed. But you do have an MBA, you do have a PMP, you do have a Sec Plus, and you describe yourself as security obsessed generalist, right? So
Yes.
for folks who want to get into either security operations or pen test management, like how would you recommend? How can someone become Tory Fisher?
Ooh, so I mean, I kind of became me on accident. It was a weird path to getting here. And again, I didn't know that pen testing was a thing. I did have a little bit of IT operations experience before coming into this role, but I came in knowing nothing. And so what I did is I just self-taught myself everything. There's not a course out there yet on
Oh,
how to
there's not.
do.
Interesting.
I know, it's almost as if somebody should be working on that. So I really kind of learned on the job. And before that, I did have my background experience with the MBA and about 13, 14 years of business operations experience. And I wouldn't say that's required. It was helpful because I'm still very much in the camp of not being super technical. But people can approach, if they're interested in this, a couple different ways, right? So if you're interested in becoming exactly me, I'm a bit of a unicorn. You got to do a lot of learning the ins and outs of the business. Like I am very experienced in running the day-to-day of what it looks like for a pen testing company, but then also the project management piece can be separate. It can be combined. It sort of depends. But what I have seen is a lot of people who want to break into pen testing, they have started as a project manager. And that's not a bad path if that's what you're interested in, because if you think you might want to be into pen testing, but you know that you're really good at organization and communication and you want to try to see what it's like, yeah, I mean, it's a perfect opportunity to shadow. You've got people right there at your fingertips. There are often times where if you are technical and you're learning skills and getting certifications and studying up, where you might be able to actually be involved almost like an apprentice. And so that does go hand in hand. But again, it depends on your organization structure, tolerance for these kind of things. But it does help having some sort of background. The Security Plus was excellent for me. I found that to be a really good primer in just about everything that I've needed to know. I am, of course, a lifelong learner, so now I'm going for my CISSP, and I'll have a few more after that. Never stop
Very
learning.
nice.
But just jumping in, and some companies also don't have a project manager, or they don't understand the value of it. Ask. If you're in an organization and you see that happening, volunteer for the position.
There you go. A lot of people ask me or ask the community, how do I break into XYZ job? And pen testing is a very difficult job to break into simply because of the volume of jobs that there is not. I never heard until just now getting a job as a project manager over pen testing engagements as a on ramp. And it's brilliant. It totally makes sense. Like it absolutely
Yeah.
makes sense because you're gonna be job shadowing, and then you'll be the first to know when a job opens up, right? So
Yeah.
I am gonna take that, Tory, to heart, and
Please.
I'll probably say Tory Fisher said, and just so like get the royalties on that. Now, Tory,
Yeah.
you mentioned how you're a bit of a unicorn and how this role kind of came about, and you mentioned how there's really no training out there. There's no vehicle for people to learn this other than basically, jumping into the field and figuring it out, having someone take a chance on them.
Yeah.
What are you doing about that? How are you solving this problem of this massive gap of knowledge out there?
Love that question. So the first thing I wanted to do was make sure that I'm not lying. Like, wait, there's really no material that's out there. So I did go through and get my PMP to see if that was something that I thought would help me specifically for managing a pen test. And while it is very interesting, valuable curriculum, I'm sorry, I hope no one from PMI Institute is on the call here. I did not find it helpful. I did not find it valuable. You do not need to have an extensive background, but you do need to understand a couple things if you want to be a pen test project manager. You need to understand the life cycle of a pen test. You need to understand what client concerns could possibly be and what the ramifications are. You need to understand how to organize yourself very, very, very deeply. And sometimes there's tools for this, sometimes there's not. You sometimes have to build your own. Great. Build the ship that you need. You have to have that. And you have to be an expert communicator. And that is not something that most people, and I'm going to, sorry, technical folks, something that technical folks often find to be a little bit challenging. So there's a lot of skill. And the good news is it's not impossible to learn. It's actually fairly easy once you get some templated processes out there. And once you have a repeatable process, something that you feel comfortable with, you can do it in your sleep. Honestly, when I was doing pen test project management, my last organization, that was not, this might be surprising to people, that was not my full-time role. That was maybe 40% of my day. The rest, 60%, was managing all the day-to-day business operations. So, it depends on what structure looks like, pen test needs. It doesn't even have to necessarily be a full-time role that is being taken on, as long as you learn what to do, document it, have a lot of really good tricks up your sleeves. I've got a couple for getting clients to respond to you and how to triage, and you're golden.
I love it. So no one from PMI is here. So you're saying the Ishikawa diagram you don't wheel that thing out for pen testing engagements?
No, no.
Yeah, I got my PMP like a long time ago, and I remember studying some of these things, and I'm like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Who's using these?
Yeah, not us. And honestly, generally the engagements are too short for that level of detail and structure. So it's not as important and relevant. So I mean, unless you're doing a pen test that's like 6 months to a year long, you don't need a RACI chart. You don't need to have every other day touch point calls with the client to check in on things. Things are fine. You don't need that.
Yeah, we got this. We'll deliver a report at the end of
Yeah,
the month. So
exactly.
so to Tori's point, she is working on a course. Can I tell them about this now?
Please.
She is
Yeah,
working
please
on
do.
a course, and it's basically all of her knowledge on doing pen test management in a course for Simply Cyber Academy. It's in progress right now. I've seen some pieces of it. It looks phenomenal. As you've been talking to her today, you could tell she's phenomenal and quite intelligent, especially when it comes to delivering on how to manage a pen test. So it's definitely aligned with Simply Cyber core values, and the delivery of it is going to be awesome. We don't have a date yet for when it's coming out, but believe me, when it does, we will make you well aware of it, and you can learn from Tori as well. Now, AB, who's basically co-host, AB, AB is like Ed McMahon on the couch. Okay, like I'm behind the desk, you're the guest, and then he's on the couch. He's like, hey, he's like, Tori, I see you climbed Mount Fuji recently. What's going on with
I
that?
did.
Share this life experience with us.
Yeah, yeah. So I did take a short break in between roles, and one of my lifelong dreams has been to summit, and I say summit specifically, Mount Fuji, because I did try this 10 years ago, completely flop. Had some of my friends stuck on the mountain for a couple of days. We were hit with typhoons, and it was a huge disaster.
Oh my
But
god.
I've always wanted to climb, this is the thing, I've always wanted to climb Mount Fuji by myself. I'm a very big solo traveler, even though I've got a family and all of that. I never let my husband come on vacation with me. I do my own stuff. I like to be it's my Zen silent time. And I finally did it. I finally summited Fuji in the very, very, very beginning of September. It was a quick turnaround. It was a crazy, 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 crazy organization to make this happen. I flew into Tokyo, slept for a couple hours, took a really long bus ride, climbed the mountain, got for about 6 hours, slept for a few hours in a little hut, got up at midnight. I had a headlamp on, and I had to rock climb and scramble the rest of the way up in the dark. Got up there right before sunrise, saw the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful sun come up, and then the very painful 6 hours back down. But it was one of the best experiences of my whole life.
That sounds absolutely amazing and unparalleled with other experiences. Going down was painful. Was it because you were blown out from climbing up, or was it just awkward to
Yeah,
go? Okay.
yeah, a little bit of both. And I had rental gear with me because I wasn't going to fly all that out from Seattle. And I didn't realize, I'm still kicking myself for it. It's so stupid. I did not do a good job preparing. I did not look at everything in the bag they gave me. They gave me 2 knee wraps because everybody has such a hard time going down because it is so freaking steep and it's volcanic rock. So you are literally sliding. I'm a skier. I like to ski.
Okay.
So I was actually trying to like slalom on the way down. I'm like, okay, if I start doing S turns while I'm walking, it's going to be less painful and I won't slide as much. And everyone else I saw kind of had the same thing, but
Oh my
should
god,
have.
I love it. You should
Oh,
have brought your skis. You could have been the
I
first person to
know.
haul butt down Fuji on a pair of skis.
They won't let you. I did look into it. I'm
Well,
also a retired skydiver, so I looked to see like, well, does anyone base jump off this? Can anyone like parasail off this or something? They don't allow any of that. So
too much risk.
no shortcuts. Yeah, yeah, no shortcuts.
So retire. I didn't know skydiving was something you retire from. Did you
Yeah.
you made a decision like I'm not doing this anymore?
Exactly. Yeah. So I started skydiving in my early gosh, I was 18. At my first jump was when I was 18. It was on my birthday. And I lived and worked at Skydive Chicago for about, I don't know, 3 years, was in the sport for or 8 years. And, I've got over 500 jumps. I had a wild experience. I was on a team, actually. I was on a women's four-way skydiving team, the Fireflies. Really great time. Learned a whole lot. Did a lot of just really cool stuff. But injuries are real. I still have a bum ankle. I had to get it rebuilt with some stem cells from too many sprained ankles from jumping. And, I'm trying to live just a little bit quieter of a life. I'm still climbing mountains and rock climbing them in the dark, but it's that's a little bit safer than.
What are you doing this weekend? Are you like swimming with sharks this weekend? I'm going to be on my couch watching Patriots football, and you're like, rappelling over a rainforest or something. It's amazing. Are you like an adrenaline junkie? Like, do you seek out adrenaline activities?
Within reason, and I know that sounds kind of silly, like I am very big about measuring risk and risk versus reward.
Yes.
So for example, I will not get on a motorcycle. I did once and I hated it. And I'm like, you know what? There is if I fall or if something happens, if I get hit, there's nothing blocking me. Road rash, missing limbs, dangerous. Same thing with scuba diving. So I'm actually PADI certified, and I have not been in years. I've only been 3 times since I was certified, and I just decided, I love snorkeling and I can see just as cool stuff without having to worry about an oxygen tank and swimming up too fast and, all of that. And I'd rather, do the things that are really cool safely than go nuts. I do indoor skydive still, though. That is a whole lot of fun in the wind tunnels. That's not super dangerous.
Okay.
If anything, you'll get kicked in the face, and that's fine.
So we're getting recommendations for indoor skydiving from Tory Fisher. We're also talking about pen testing and managing pen testing engagements. Simply amazing stuff here. And this conversation's been great. So Tory, obviously you're going to be doing the Simply Cyber Academy course based on all of this, experience that you have.
Yeah.
Where can people get more Tory in their life?
Yeah, so a couple other different outlets. So I am very involved with the DEF CON New Village. Shout out to anyone who was able to visit us. This year was our first time doing it. Josh Mason did a wonderful job pulling us all together, putting together an excellent team, excellent group. We shared so much valuable information. Honestly, it was one of the highlights of my year. It was so cool. So I'm involved with them again. I will be part of the village. You can see me at DEF CON for sure. We have a very awesome, very lively, chatty Discord, so feel free to join that as well. It's not completely specific to DEF CON. If you've got newbie questions, absolutely join that. We're here to guide. We're here to help. I am also a part of Ginger Hacker Initiative as well, working with Andrew Crotty on that. Has been really cool as he gets his organization up and running. And I am, I am a WeSee's mentor as well. So I'm kind of all over, but if you can't find me at one of those places, I know not everyone can get to DEF CON. Please just find me on LinkedIn. I am happy to answer any questions, big or small. I really want to help people. I get so much satisfaction out of bringing new people to the industry, solving problems, and as I've said blockers 1,000 times, helping people remove blockers. So please just reach out. I like to talk. I'm friendly. I'm here for you.
I love it. I'm trying to get the your LinkedIn page up, but I can't right now, unfortunately, for some reason.
So probably because I hacked it a little bit, the URL. Most people don't know there's a function on LinkedIn where you can create your own, and it's not your name. It's Tory Fisher says hello with slashes in between.
Oh, I love it. Okay, here we go. Yeah. Tory Fisher says hello. I've got it right here. I'm going to share it on. Oh my God, guys. Of course, Windows is like, oh, you know what I think you want? I think you want to put this in like 4 different frames right now.
No.
Yeah, let me show everybody what this looks like. Right here, this is Tory's LinkedIn account. So I'll drop a link in chat. Go connect with her. I'm a first level connection, so I'm on the inner circle of Tory Fisher's professional network, which is phenomenal. I love being there. We've been talking with Tory Fisher. Guys, this has been just a banger of an episode. I've really enjoyed it. It's hard to believe an hour passes as quickly as it does, Tory. Thank you on behalf of all of the community, all of the chat. Great questions. Thank you for coming and sharing all of this information with us and inspiring people to know that not just pen testing and managing pen tests is an entire discipline and a job that people can seek out, but also that pen testers should be aware of it in order to be amazing and successful and uber effective at delivering on those pen tests. It's been an absolute delight.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. Tori, thank you. Chat, thank you. Everyone, be well. We'll be back tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern time for the Daily Cyber Threat Brief. I'm Jerry. She's Tori. Until next time, stay secure.